Succession planning is at the top of the list when it comes to priorities for many HR professionals. They are keen to build the next generation of leaders and know it's critical to an employer's success. And yet, succession planning remains a challenging area when it comes to building and formalizing a program, identifying future leaders, and ensuring their success. Our recent roundtable, moderated by Associate Publisher and Managing Editor Todd Humber, brought together senior HR experts to discuss the issues and provide possible solutions. In this video, the second of a three-part series, panelists talk about the importance of leaders building up other leaders and whether high potentials should be informed they're on the company's radar as future leaders.
A couple of things you can do is you can highlight those people that are doing a really good job of it. Most people have a company newsletter. You can put them on the front page. You look at the people that are coming out of this area. Look at the development work that's being done. So if you then support and make them into champions, their peers are going to look at them and say, hey, they're getting, here's a picture of the CEO shaking hands with this manager and thanking her for developing the people, and a picture and a certificate. And people see that throughout the entire organization. You start to change the culture towards, yes, well, maybe I need to make a contribution to doing that.
I think there's also a mindset to help leaders develop, which is that if you are seen as an exporter of talent and you are rewarded for that, you'll also be seen as a talent builder and you'll attract talent as well. So the more that you're developing people and moving them around into the business, the more that people are going to want to come to you because they're going to see that's a development opportunity. So I think building that mindset's important, but you've got to have a culture of mobility to support that. If it's impossible for people to move under leaders that are going to build them or move out across the organization, that's not going to help. So that culture of mobility needs to happen, but you've also got to have the support when people move into new roles as well. So there's just a bigger cultural aspect in helping leaders develop that mindset as well.
Maybe I can build on what Paul said as well, because I was just thinking about, the comment about, well, why would I give up these managers? I've been training these guys. I work really hard. My blueprint is now solid. Why would I let them go out to other things? Well, part of it is the mindset and the culture of why they're doing what they're doing. But the other part of it is because maybe they don't get the recognition, as Paul described. So, whether or not that's in newsletters, but, most companies have, recognition programs. So you got to build that into the overall process.
I think often the answer to that question is it depends. It's always what you hear. It depends. I totally agree with Paul that it is an engagement and retention strategy by doing so. I think what's important is how the organization does it. Some organizations will say, we're going to do this for all the right positive reasons, but then they'll tell people they're high potential by telling them what their rating is or telling them they're on a list and maybe off a list. And so it can create the wrong kind of response from talent in the organization. So it's about the way in which you tell high potentials and tell talent that they're important to the organization and that you're going to invest in them and grow them. It's not about saying you're an XYZ rating or you're on a list, but next year you're off a list. So I think it's really important to help leaders have that conversation and give them the language to do that.
It's a great point, but you have to remember it's a promise. So if you even give the inkling of there's possibility for you in the future, whether or not they achieve that or you support them, it's still a promise. So if you don't deliver, you've got another part of the equation to manage overall. So I guess the point is, if you're going to identify someone as a high potential, you have to deliver. And everybody's got to get on board with the success of the individual. Otherwise, I kind of disagree with Paul a little bit. You got to keep it, not disagree so much as you just got to keep it cautious until you can actually get on board. Because if you ever turn somebody away or you turn them down because it doesn't work out, you have the opposite effect to deal with as well. It doesn't happen that often because most times people get on board and they all kind of rush through and they get pushing in the right direction. But it is a promise, regardless of the perception you may have.
And maybe just piggybacking on that promise, I would, first off, I think people need to be told, and the high potential people are probably your brightest, so they've figured this out on their own anyway. And the recruiters are telling them how good they are. So you need to tell them. The only thing I would do is hedge the bet a bit, because if I'm given a list of high potential people and it's generated through the organization, I might hedge my bet that I'm going to tell 80% of that 100% that they're high potential, because I know the other 20% is probably not accurate. And they may not be on the list the following year. So to your point about promise the 80%, don't promise the 100%, because you probably are going to be wrong on those 20. And that's where, if your HR people are pretty good at what they do, they'll add more credibility to the predictability of that list.
There's that obvious group at the very top that absolutely you need to tell them and they need to know. and you'll probably lose them if you don't tell them. But then there's that 20% in the gray zone that my rule of thumb is I want to see if they're still on that list next year, and then I'll tell that group. The list will change, the people evaluating them change, so it's a promise and an expectation, so you really need to manage that expectation. I've seen it go wrong several times. I've worked in an organization where we went too far with telling the top performers who they were and the high potentials who they were, and then we didn't end up having enough positions for all these fabulous people. Sure. So you can run into trouble that way.